This is Kristine Quinn, and we are going to be looking forward to the next journaling workshop called Journaling for Mental Wellness. Thank you for joining me on this next step. Maybe for some of you, it's your very first step in art journaling, and I'm happy that you can be with us. We want to look back at this year and think about all the trials and tribulations that we've been through, especially as educators, and take this moment to really focus on self-care and rest. Summer is either coming very shortly for some of us, or it has already arrived. And we want to take this time to reboot, refocus our energy, and replenish our spirit. I love this saying here by Eleanor Brown, who says, rest and self-care are so important. When you take time to replenish your spirit, it allows you to serve from the overflow. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. And I know as teachers, sometimes that's hard to do. We give and give and give, and we want to make sure that we take the time to refill those empty vessels. Let's look at this year in retrospect and really think about, what did we learn? Certainly we rose to challenges and we overcame obstacles, and probably through it all we learned something. We learned something about our families, about our students. We learned about our own teaching and what our capacities are. We certainly learned a lot about society during 2020 as well. So I want you to think about this. What's the most important thing or things that you learned this year? What's the most important thing that you learned about yourself? If we think about our lives and the jobs that we lead as teachers, we really do have certain, what I'd like to call superpowers. So I want you to think about, what are your superpowers? Were you driven this year to find new, to your breaking point? What are those weaknesses that led you to that? And the other thing that I want you to think about this year is, what are you willing to stand for? And what are you willing to stand against? So if we use all of these prompts as a moment to reflect, I'd like you to take this moment now and write down some thoughts. What did you learn this year? So if you'd like to pause the video now and write down those things, come back when you're done. Okay, now that you've had a moment to reflect, I want to let you know what our objectives are going to be for our time together. We want to look at not only what did we learn from the past year, but we want to take this moment to use our creative energy and our skills to document through artistic representation just what it is we went through this year as teachers, as individuals, as family members, as members of our community. And most importantly, I want to take this time to collaborate with fellow educators and enjoy the company of being together, even through Zoom, and creating something together. So this workshop is going to be interactive. I hope that people will be able to share and participate in the discussion when we are in our Zoom meetings. So those are our objectives. We're here for art therapy. Let's not forget that. We're not looking for a polished product. We are here for the process, and we are here for the reflection, and we are here for the creative therapy. We're going to have 2 days to work on this journal spread, and here's how I envision the time together. I think that for day one, we're going to take that time for reflection. Maybe you'll do that reflection before you get to the workshop, or maybe you'll take some time during the workshop to write those things down, those important thoughts. I'm thinking that I might even be printing mine on the computer, using some different size fonts and some different fonts to be used as pieces of ephemera when I'm putting together my pages. The first day, we're going to think mostly about that first layer. Remember that when we're working in our journals, we work in a double page spread, meaning two opposing pages. On the second day, then we're going to be using that collage technique and adding ephemera, layers. Maybe we're going to be adding some of those things that we printed out on the paper. Maybe we're going to be using different types of decorative paper. Maybe you're going to be using stencils. Maybe you've got cards from students or pictures or things like that that we're going to use on those layers and really create that mixed media. And the goal, again, incorporating that reflection. Okay, so we're going to begin with our quick write. And again, you might be doing this at home or during the workshop. You can write it on different types of paper if you would like. You can use different types of font. But again, we want to think about what we learned this past year. Here again are some of the ideas to think about. Okay, the next step, we're going to be building backgrounds. I'm going to be using acrylic paints and different types of materials to create those backgrounds that I like, maybe paintbrushes, maybe sponges, maybe bubble wrap. I'm going to be exploring bubble wrap during this workshop. If I like to scrape with acrylics, then I need those nice sharp edges like a credit card. If you like a textured background, then you want to look for things like combs or toothbrushes or different types of materials that can give you a texture. And I'm going to pick at least 2 different acrylic paints to be using my texture. Maybe you'll pick more, maybe you'll just pick 1. The other thing that I'm going to want to do is gather some ephemera, things that I want to use. And right now, what I want to do is show you a couple of the materials that I'm going to be gathering. I'm going to be working on this idea of the tree of life. And I'll show you a few examples in a moment. But I've gathered some things like my acrylic paints. Now, because I'm going to be working with the theme of trees, you might choose something else. I'm going to be sticking with these kind of earth tone colors. These are 2-ounce acrylic paints that come in many, many colors. I also love the collage technique. So the way that I use collage is that I use Mod Podge to use as an adhesive. I may even play around with something a little more opaque, and that's gesso. You don't have to have this. It's just something to play around with if you feel like it. And I have this idea in my head about where I want to go with this, and it's going to include some decorative papers. So I have chosen some papers that are actually Napolese papers. They're the homemade papers, and they're bright and colorful. Maybe you want to use wrapping paper or stationery, or maybe you're not going to be using this type of paper at all, but that's something that I'm going to be using. As always, when we're journaling, we want to use our things like markers. Sharpie markers are wonderful. Something that I love to use is my white acrylic marker as well. And then I always like an idea of a gold or silver pen as well. So if you have those things, you are set and ready to go. We are going to look at these ideas as we go through our workshop together, reflecting, making choices, committing to those choices, and appreciating what comes on the page. And then we're going to be looking also through samples that might spur some ideas. Here is an idea of if you just want to use writing. This was a page that I had to process some feelings and some emotions, and I just used writing with bleeding tissue. You can see some of the white pen there and different types of gel markers. I love to work in collage, so here's an example of using those layers. You can see there's music, there's print, there's newspaper, So if you like to use collage, you're going to be wanting to choose some of those materials that you can layer. If you like to just use paints, then here's a different idea where it's just drawn with different types of paints. You can see that. You're seeing the beginning of the idea of my tree design. And here's another idea. This has watercolors in the background and Sharpie. And those are the only two mediums that this page has. So maybe you would like to use something like that. And then again, we're going to choose a focus point for our page. Maybe it's going to be a photo of yourself, or maybe it's going to be an organic shape. For my ideas, I think I'm going to go for the idea of that tree of life idea, like we see here on the slide. You get to choose your own. If you like the idea of trees, here's a few examples. I always like to go on Pinterest and look at other people's work because it inspires my own creative ideas. So as I'm looking at these pictures, I'm getting an idea of kind of what I would like to do with my own page. And I'm going to have to make a decision. Do I want to work with just trees and their trunks, or do I want to use leaves? I think I'm going to make that decision as I'm working, but I'm looking for a few ideas here, and I like these ideas. I'm definitely going to use writing on my page. So I like these pages that give me ideas of how to incorporate the calligraphy or the writing or the handwriting on my page. So again, this idea on the very right-hand side, this tree shape, this organic shape that actually has a journaling inside of those beautiful colored areas. I like that. I also like these other ideas here. So those are just some of my ideas for inspiration that I'm going to be working with. Okay, are you ready to do it? Let's do it. I will see you at the workshop on June 7th and 8th, and I will send the Zoom link attached to this video. I look forward to seeing you. Take care.